Okay, so recording. You may or may not have noticed that these past couple of weeks, we have been having a number of videos come out from the Terigata Festival. Day after day, videos have been coming out of interviews of nuns talking about favorite poems written in ancient times by the earliest bhikkhunis. It's actually the earliest extant collection of poetry by women. And then also a bunch of affiliated programs. So anyway, my attention being on the Terigata, even though this is not an affiliated event, there's something I want to share with you from that collection today. And this is the story and the poem of Sona, known as Sona of Many Children. In the Terigata, her verse starts on, her poem starts at verse number 102, goes through 106. The first line of her poem is, I bore 10 sons in this material body, and then being weak and aged, I approached a bhikkhuni. And then she got these teachings from the bhikkhuni, and the third verse, she says, as I underwent training, the divine eye was purified. I know my former habitation in which I lived before, and so on. So she attained enlightenment based on teachings from another bhikkhuni. The background story to Sona, according to the commentarial material, is that she had, as she said, 10 sons or 10 children. Children and sons could be interchangeable in the wording. And raised them all well, did everything for them, got them suitable spouses. And her husband had passed, and then the adult children were pressuring her to go ahead and give them their inheritance. They could make good use of it. And of course they would take care of her. And she trusted that. She turned everything over to her children, and suddenly they treated her like nothing. Completely neglected her, even though she'd given up everything, giving it to them. They treated her quite terribly. And her response was, well, she had encountered Buddhism. She knew about the Dhamma, and she was done. She said, she's out of here. She went off and became a bhikkhuni. And so she did this in her old age. And the story goes that she meditated very intensively while others would be sleeping. She had the thought that being so old, she didn't have the luxury of time to just act kind of like normal. So she really cut short her sleep, and she would meditate deep into the night. And in the darkness, she would hold on to pillars to feel her way as she did her walking. If you've ever done walking meditation, it's really a great asset to practice overall. If you've ever done walking meditation in pitch blackness, it's awesome. There's just something truly awesome about it. Anyway, so this is what she did. Excuse me a second. And dealing with the allergies. And so she tells us what teaching it was that helped her to see through it all. So this bhikkhuni taught her the Dhamma, the doctrine, the aggregates or elements of existence, the sense bases, and the elements, according to Ken Norman translation. Well, I left out a line. So when she learned that, she cut off her hair and went forth. Okay, so what is this thing that she was taught? In the old language, it's sa me dhammam madese si khanda yatana dhaktuyo. Sa me dhammam ade se se, so she, me, the Dhamma taught. Kandayatana dhatuyo, one of these really long compound words. Some scholars doing text critical studies of the text, which is it's a very recent thing to be doing text critical studies, have pointed that in Buddhism, they learned it from Christian text critical studies. They noticed that really long compound words tend to be later, not really so much contemporaneous with the Buddha, but later decades or centuries. This is a really long compound. And when I looked up that compound, I only found it in the Therigatha and in one other location. It might have been in the monks' collection of poetry, the Therigatha. I'm not sure now, I don't remember. But it really made an impression on me. So perhaps it indicates that some of the poetry or some of the wording in the poetry is of late origin. I kind of would like to believe that this was some wording that the nuns themselves came up with. You know, the lore among the nuns themselves is pretty much lost. It just peeks out among the male-oriented material that was preserved so well over the centuries. And the Therigatha collection of poetry is one of these rare little pockets of the canon. Actually, it's a huge pocket, the main pocket of the canon. Excuse me. In which we can see some of the kind of culture and interactions among the bhikkhunis. Outside of the Therigatha, you don't hear about bhikkhunis teaching other bhikkhunis. You would have thought that if this collection hadn't survived, you would have thought that only monks taught the female monks. You would have just thought that's how it was, but it's not so. Excuse me a second. So what did she teach her? The Khandayatana Dhatuyo, the Khandas, the Ayatana, and the Dhatu. So the Khandas, what is that? Khanda is like a collection of stuff, a heap or collection. And when we hear about khandas in Buddhism, what we're talking about are usually the 5 khandas, the 5 aggregates. Is anyone here familiar enough with the teachings to list in order the 5 aggregates?
The 5 aggregates are perception. I always forget the order of them and the significance of them, and they're supposed to be the things that the mind will try to do, and but there's really no point in their doing them.
Thank you, Meredith. Perception certainly is one of them. So it's form, so all physicality that you're experiencing. Feeling, meaning pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral quality of an experience. Perception, your identification of phenomena. Karma formations or mental formations, the sankhara. And the consciousness. So you have 1 of physicality and 4 of the mind. So that is the whole mind-body experience wrapped up in 5 bits, 5 heaps made up of smaller parts.
Why are they called aggregates?
Because they're made up of smaller parts.
That's it.
They're aggregated.
Okay.
Ayatana are the sense bases. Anybody here got any sense? Anyone here got any sense bases? What would that be? Just call them out. What are the sense bases? You don't have any sense bases? Or you can't unmute? Oh, wait.
You have
Yeah, that was how to do it.
sound, you have sensation, you have
Well, what senses are you using right now?
I'm using my hearing.
Yes.
I'm using my sense of time.
Well, there might be that as well. We don't normally count that one. Hi, Adriana. Welcome. All right. So I'm going to cut in. John's sitting here looking like he knows. Come on, John. Let's hear it.
Well, we've got I'm seeing, I'm hearing. Sometimes I smell things, sometimes I taste things, and what am I? Oh, touch, and then finally the stuff that goes on up in there, more or less.
Thought.
Very good. Okay. So we have eye, ear, nose, tongue, the rest of the body. Because the eye, ear, nose, and tongue are just so compelling. We consider them separate organs, and then we have all the rest of everything of the body as one, counted as one sense base, and then the mind. So we're, with the 5 aggregates, we had 1 of body and 4 of mind. Here we have 5 of body and 1 of mind. Just another way of looking at it. And then the last bit of that compound word, kandayatana dhatuyo, the dhatu are the 4 elements. So, well, some say 5 elements, some say 6 elements, if you want to get picky about it, but it's elements. And what do you suppose the elements would be? Adriana knows. Dallas knows. I don't know why Dallas is being quiet.
We seem to have nothing to say about them.
That's right.
There's nothing to say of them.
All right, so we have the element of solidity, earth element. So you experience it as pressure and like compactness, weightiness. So you have earth element. Then you have the experience you could categorize as water element, which is cohesion. You know, like if you found a gecko in the desert dead, and you left it in the sun for 2 weeks and came back and picked it up roughly, it would crumble in your hand because it's lacking the cohesive quality of water. So you can see how your body, what is it, the 80%? I don't do numbers. What's
80? It's 80%.
Thanks, Meredith. 80% of this body is water. And so it's got this cohesive quality. It's holding together. And if you were to dry me and fry me like a gecko in the desert, crumble, crumble, crumble. When a person has been cremated, I got to happen to be at a monastery one time when a deceased supporter was their ashes were being tossed. And some people were too terrified to take the bag and get a handful of ashes and toss it, superstitious or whatever. But I was very happy to do it. And I was so amazed at they were just ashes. It's just ashes. You threw them in the air and they were just ashes, but it was a human body without the water. So water is cohesiveness. And it also is, the quality of water itself. And think of how water like flows like in a creek. Like you could even think of your breath as water element as it flows in and out, for example. So we're talking about kind of the abstract quality in addition to water per se. Earth, water, fire, which is heat element. And we tend to, it's usually described in terms of, relative warmth and relative coolness. But I also like to allergies, excuse me. Think a little bit further about it, how you and I were immersed in a particular temperature that's conducive to life. And if the temperature around us were to go to warm or to cool outside of the narrow range that's good for our lives, for our bodies, we die. So heat element is not only warming and cooling relative temperature, but it's the very fact that everything around us in our immediate sphere has to be a livable temperature. And it's not that there's this temperature here and that temperature there. They're completely different things. It's that they're the same thing. I thought about this one time in this sort of way, the first time once at my home monastery many years ago, leaning near the wood stove on a cold day. And I was reflecting on how the wood stove was radiating heat, and the heat was going by osmosis directly into my body. And so the heat of the wood stove was directly becoming part of the force of my life force of my body. And I thought, well, that's pretty bizarre, because there's no individuality, personality, there's no being in that fire. It's just a thing. And yet, as I put my body near it, the warmth of it was giving life-giving warmth. There was life-giving warmth coming from it into my body, just directly in. And then I said, oh, actually the warmth of my body isn't who I am or anything special. It's just the warmth of the body, just like the warmth of any other body, just like the sun on a rock. It's just warmth, just heat element. Excuse me. Earth, water, fire, and air. So air, of course, is the oxygen that we breathe. Well, I forgot with fire also it includes the chemical digestion and so forth. Air element is airiness, air, and movement. Movement, I don't understand why, but anyway, movement is considered part of air element. Excuse me. You have air in your body with upgoing winds and downgoing winds. Isn't that delicate? I like
Yes.
it. Thank you, Meredith. And yeah, so tend to think of the breath as air element, but as I pointed out a moment ago, you can find all four elements in the breath. When the breath strikes your nose, close your eyes. When the breath strikes the sinuses, that's your earth element. When the physicality of the air hits, earth element. But if you sit there noticing the flow like a river, like a creek going in and out, that's your water element in your breathing. But if you notice the warmth on the out breath, well, the coolness of the in breath, the warmth on the out breath, you're surely noticing your fire element. And then there's the air per se, the air going in, air going out, or the movement of the breath coming in, the movement of the breath coming out. So don't be too quick to just think of it on a sort of shallow way as, oh, well, I'm breathing, that's air element. It's a little more abstract than that. And then you may add space as the fifth element and consciousness as the sixth. I've never heard anyone go beyond 6 in listing elements. Usually we just talk about the 4. Sometimes people talk about the 5, and occasionally they go ahead and talk about 6. So let's find out about space element. You can close your eyes and drop open your jaw. What's that in your mouth? What's that in your mouth around your tongue?
Moisture.
Aside from that, trolling me. All right,
Drooling.
try this. Open your mouth. So there's space there at the open mouth. Now close the mouth. The space was there, now your mouth is closed. When your mouth is closed, you're going to think, well, this is my mouth. This is in me. But when it's open, it's the same area. Is it you? It's a real gray area as to whether this is me or not me. Better to just get rid of the whole me concept anyway. But this is one of those areas where it's a little fraught trying to apply the concept of me. And there are other areas of space in the body. And you could do it like this too. Like you can make a space or with your arms around like this. Now, if somebody were to come and drop something annoying right between your arms, you'd feel like they did it to you. But it's just because you claimed that space. How is that yours? That's not yours any more than the space on top of a mountain. It's just space. Right? So that space element. And then the consciousness takes a moment of explanation. Consciousness in Buddhism is not, it was actually probably a rather unfortunate choice of words for the old word vijnana, because vijnana is, it's not the self, it's not the soul, it's not like the ego, it's this kind of, I don't have a definition in hand. There are 6 classes of it. There's it arising at the eye or at the ear or at the nose or at the tongue or at the body or at the mind. Right, 6, good. And it's like the spark of awareness, spark of beingness that arises at any one of these. There might be a million of them arising, one after the other at the eye, and then a whole bunch more at the ear. Metaphor given to me was like, or simile given was like, if you had a candle that's lit and it lights another candle and goes out, which lights another candle and goes out, which lights another candle and goes out, something like that. I'm not sure if even that's what I was told many years ago, but you know, it might be a little bit more like a candle that's lit and goes out, a candle that's lit and goes out, a candle that's lit and goes out, because there's not a continuation of a selfhood, even between a moment of 2 moments of consciousness, many, many millions in a second. So who or what it is that is me, that is you, is born and dying with each moment of consciousness. Here, gone, here, gone, here, gone, but really, really, really fast. It's an impersonal, non-personal element. Like all the rest of them. Earth doesn't belong to us. From ashes to ashes, dust to dust, that ain't ours. Water certainly isn't ours. We can see the water come and go from this body in this very life. We can see it so clearly. One time I sat beside a stream on a meditation retreat and noticed the tinkling sound. And then later listened to someone who was in the bathroom who had a problem, so she was in there a long time, and hearing the tinkling noise again and again, I went, just like that stream, there is really no difference. You could feel the water in your mouth. Now, somebody could make a cup of tea and hold that cup of tea, and that water in the tea is not the water of their body. And then as they sip that tea, there's some moment when we imagine that it becomes their body. We imagine it to be different from all the water in the world because it's their body water, or my cup of tea. This is, you know, there's a moment at which it becomes my body water until it isn't. And then it's just disgusting. There's no way that the water leaves the body without having become disgusting, really. Adriana's grimacing because she knows this is the kind of moment where I go into way too much detail, but I'll spare you all. Earth, water, fire. How is that personal? When you can warm yourself at a bonfire, when you can warm yourself from a gas furnace, when you can cool yourself with air conditioning, which of those was a personal being? It's just the quality of physicality. just like earth, just like water. It's this physical quality. And air, again, very impersonal. Space, I dare you to try to own that. Consciousness, good luck. So going back to that compound word, Kandayatana dhatu yo. That is what that nun taught this woman, Soma, who had born so many children and had those disappointments. So I like to say it's like, if you had a whole lot of vegetables from your garden, you could do all kinds of things with them to make them digestible. You could chop them, you could dice them, you could slice them, you could blender them. There are all kinds of ways that you could process them to become digestible, right? We have this mind-body reality that we're quite set on making all about me, and then all the complications that come with me, such as I gotta have it and get that away and you're wrong. Like all those complications that come with me. So the exercise, the advice tucked within this compound is that you take reality and you slice and dice it in various ways in order to make reality digestible. So you can chop it into the 5 aggregates, you could chop it into the 6 sense bases, you could chop it into the 4, 5, or 6 elements. Whatever way you're slicing and dicing reality, the point is it ain't you. You aren't it. You don't own it. Not me, not mine, not myself. Ajahn Brahma, it's not my problem. Nothing to do with me. The whole mind, yes, the whole mind-body experience is not me, not mine, not myself, not my problem, nothing to do with me. I don't expect everyone to understand that right away. Those last 2 bits. So I have a way of holding up my fingers to help everyone remember these ways of dissecting and what's the word I like to use? Not discontinuing. What's the word? Not dismantling. Deconstructing. That's it. These are 3 different ways of deconstructing your immediate experience to see truth, of the impersonality of it. The impermanence and non-self nature of it. Deconstructing. I like to return to that word again and again and again. Because as long as we're caught up in, like a Christmas gift wrapped up neatly with a bow on top, but that's what we see in ourselves and each other, all wrapped up neatly with a bow on top. But when we dig in with these various analytical methods, we see what's actually in that box. You know what? It isn't all that attractive, frankly. There's a line of scripture somewhere that says that if you were to cut open your body and turn it inside out, even your mother would run away in disgust. And yet that inner part of the body is no less real than the outer part, right? So we need to get realistic and look at these things quite accurately. So these little hand mnemonics that I've come up with for this, the khanda, the 5 aggregates, I like to look at them this way: form, so it's a little different from the mind part, right? So the physicality, the eye and the visual stimulation, the ear and the sound waves and so forth. That's physicality. Form, feeling, perception, mental formations, consciousness. So there you go. Okay. And then the 6 sense bases are eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. Thumbs are special. Eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, for your 6 sense bases. And again, same mind to body experience, just chopping and slicing differently, for deconstructing differently. And it doesn't really matter how you're doing it. It's just, different people are inclined differently. It doesn't matter. It's just important to do it in some sort of way. Another analytical tool again are those elements. Earth, water, fire, air, space, and consciousness. There are other analytical tools as well. The 32 or 31 parts of the body, the more original is 31, but somehow by the time the commentaries were done with it, it was 32 parts of the body, where you're looking at the more solid parts, such as your skin and your heart and so forth, your imagination, and all the way into noticing mucus and pus and everything. Like you notice all these 32 or 31 parts of the body, again, analytically or using for meditation, but it's just, it's another way of seeing what is the reality here. Now, that one is not accounting for the mental experience. That one is more just on the physical aspect. So I'm going to continue with the poems. I'm going to read a different translation for what I was using so far. This is Halsey, the Harvard version. It was after I gave birth to 10 sons with this body, when I was weak and old, that I approached a nun. She taught me the Dhamma. And this is his translation of that Kandayatana Dhatuya. She taught me the Dhamma, about what makes a person, about the senses and their objects, and about the basic elements that make up everything. And when I heard what she taught, I cut off my hair and went forth. By training under her, my eye that sees the invisible became clear. By training under her, my eye that sees the invisible became clear. I knew my previous lives, where I had lived before. I cultivated a state of mind that depends on nothing and cannot be measured. I became focused, collected. I am free, and I will always be completely free. I know the 5 impersonal things that make up a person. That in the Pali is the Panchakahanda, which is a more specific way of saying the 5 aggregates, the 5 khandas. I know the 5 impersonal things that make up a person. They may still stand, but their roots are cut. The calamity now is for miserable old age itself. I will not be reborn again. So again, that was Soma. Let's see, of the book of 5 verses, hers was 1, 2, 3, 4. Wait, oh, I'm sorry. Okay, hers is number 8 of the 5th chapter of the Charigata. And so that is the teaching that I wanted to share with you today. Now, anybody who's fairly new or brand new, like Audrey, hello again, Audrey. The way people show appreciation for a talk that was useful or uplifting or helpful in some way is to say, well done, in the old language, which is sadhu. So if in the lineage I was trained in Sri Lankan lineage, to say sadhu after a Dhamma talk is obligatory. So if it was a really lousy talk, you say sadhu, 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 sadhu. But if it was a really magnificent talk, you shout the sadhus. So now is the time for any sadhus you might like to, wait, everyone needs to unmute. Just in case you have any sadhus for me, Dallas won't, but I'll help tell them to unmute anyway.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu,
Sadhu,
sadhu.
sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Okay, very good.
An extra sadhu.
I caught that. All right, very good. So do we have any questions or feedback and thoughts about the teaching that I just gave you and the Kandayatana Dhatuyo from that poem?
So these are ways of parsing reality.
Deconstructing.
Deacons.
Something that a few of you have heard me say many times, but some of you will not have heard it all yet, is, Hidyana knows what's coming, is that you don't have to create a bigger, better you in order to gain enlightenment. It's not that you're some kind of inferior vehicle that has to, get tinkered with and become, strong and big enough to hold enlightenment. Is that you need to remove everything that isn't enlightened.
Yeah.
All the habits, all the ways of being, all of the misperceptions, all of the delusions, all the greed, hatred, delusion, pride, and so forth, all the troubled states. Remove all the dross and trouble, and then the default is the awakened mind, enlightenment. So we need to kind of create structures of good habits and learning in order to tackle the job of deconstructing everything that makes up this so-called self. Understand quite clearly and begin to have breakthroughs into reality, permanent breakthroughs, not just temporary ones. The temporary breakthroughs enable us to put down a lot of our negative states and anger and jealousy and fear and so forth. We can put those down, but it's a little bit like sweeping things under the rug. They're not bothering us right now. They're not visible right now, but they're latent. They're just waiting for us, for the right conditions later in this life or in some other life. But to really get rid of them, we need to have the breakthroughs of stages of enlightenment. How do you do that? Not by being bigger, by being smaller, by being less, by being not so full of oneself. Bit by bit, step by step. Baby step by baby step. And so that's the good news, that you can do this because you're not so specially bad. You're not like coated with a lacquer that would make it impossible to remove the dross. You're not specially bad. The bad news is that it's a lot more fun to go forget about all this and go do other things and get caught up in the delights of samsara, to the extent that samsara allows you that luxury. So that's the bad news. It's not fun. And sometimes it's as difficult as holding an ice cube in your hand a long time. It just gets hard, but it's worth it. Every moment we put into it is worth it. I think it was James Barras in California that I heard say, one of the teachers in California, say, a moment of mindfulness is never wasted. So there you go. Every little moment that we take towards this journey of dismantling, deconstructing, and finding truth is worth it. Thoughts, comments, questions? Okay, well, shall we then call it a day?
I was going to ask, actually, well, first, thank you. I always love the reminder of it's not about creating a bigger, better you. It's really helpful. And you always say, it's not about being saintly and one of the saints, necessarily. It's about removing the obstacles. It's not about being perfect. And that has been coming in my mind. I make mistakes at least 1 billion a day. And so it's really helpful to know, okay, this is part of the training. It's not about being a bit, because before it'd be like this, no, I'm such a bad Buddhist. And now it's like, it's okay. It's part of the training. You got to remove the junk. But I want to know so I never know how to take, like the 5 aggregates and things like this with me in my daily life. I can like give them lip service, but these kinds of things, I'm never really sure of how I'm supposed to take this off the cushion in a day-to-day context, if that makes sense.
Sure. Hang on a second. I don't know that there's really one answer. I think this is for you to craft. You could be doing a study of a particular area of this and apply it as much as you can, or you could just Whenever something comes up, look at it from the various angles. Something else that jumps to my mind is another way of deconstructing experiences is with the 3 kinds of feeling. So as you're going about your day and you're responding to something, you could be noticing whether you're responding to pleasantness, unpleasantness, or neutrality, and whether you're responding wisely or unwisely. You could be noticing that, oh, beautiful music. No, it's hearing. It's hearing. Beautiful, not beautiful. What is that? It's just there's hearing. You could, excuse me. You could look at something on the ground that repulses you, and then just stand there looking until you're wise to what's happening. Let's say that you see a bit of broken plastic beside a broken brick, and you're like, oh, people are so disgusting. They shouldn't do that. They go, wait, what's actually happening? Okay, what's actually happening is that there's light and color meeting the eyes. And then with that, there's the perception. Remember our aggregates of perception? So straight away you had a feeling of unpleasantness. So you're already kind of manipulating your thoughts to explain that. So there was light and color that went to your eye. There was the identification of plastic, broken, brick, broken, signs of human activity, signs of careless human activity. And then, so that was a perception of what it is. And then the perceptions kind of churned down to, additional perceptions. The Vedana was more clearly involved there of the, I don't like it. It's unpleasant. Well, it's unpleasant. And then you jump to not liking it. And then this karma formation came up, the middle formation came up of, that's wrong. Right? And so you could deconstruct all of that. And instead of standing there with a moment of ill will and righteousness, just dig back to the source of it. If you really are concerned about how it's going to affect beings, pick it up. But to stand there with ill will is not good for you. And you could look at a beautiful thing right beside it and question yourself, what makes the one beautiful and what makes the other repulsive, unacceptable. See the mental movements in it. You could notice how your consciousness had bounced back and forth between, the visual and the mental, the not liking it. You could just taste, just very briefly, that little kick from somewhere of the mind or heart of shouldn't have happened, bad. So your consciousness had gone from noticing light and color all the way to the, that kick of reactivity. With the 6 sense bases, you could just stop for a moment. It's an alternative. We're still looking at the bit of plastic and broken brick. You could just stop and stand there a moment and become aware of all of your senses sequentially. I'm just making this up. This is totally off the cuff. Okay, well, I saw that. There is seeing. What else is there? There's hearing. But I let go of hearing in order to focus in on the seeing. Because you see, perception found something with some juice in it for me. And for whatever reason, I wanted the negativity. So I zeroed in on what had the juice for me in that moment. I mean, there might be beautiful music going on in the background that I tuned out because I wanted a moment of negativity. And so I went there. So, so for whatever reason, I tuned into this thing that I was going to find dislikable. I completely ignored the beautiful dandelion beside it, zeroed in on that. But what else is happening? Well, there's hearing. Oh, listen to all those children. What is that? Okay. And then there's smelling. There are flowers nearby. And no, there's no real tasting right now, but how about the rest of the body? Oh, it's warm out, or it's cool out, or it's cool on my hands and warm in my jacket, or whatever is happening there, and the weight on the body, on the feet. And what's happening mentally? Outrage. So you could deconstruct in terms of the 6 sense bases. 4 elements, you can notice, oh, these are things that are hard. They are solid. These are earth element. They're earth element. They're going to eventually break down into further earth element. They're not water element. They're not fire element. They're not air element. They have some space to them. And it's my consciousness that's dancing around all of this. Dancing at the eye again and again and again. So that's just a sample of some ways that you could play with it. But, you know, if you were making the 6 senses, you're like, this is going to be my primary practice for the next year or next 6 months, then you would want to zero in on that rather than necessarily looking at the 3 kinds of Vedana, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, or looking at the elements or looking at the 5 aggregates, but just kind of be with that. If that was the one that you had chosen, or, you know, the others, you would stay with that more. It can be kind of particularly helpful when the end result is a crunch into something really painful. And then you go back and kind of autopsy the whole experience. Why did I end up in a ditch of ill will or fear or worry? Well, this time it all started with that ticket stub that I noticed on the corner of the table there. And then I remembered that we're not going to these things. And then I like all of these thoughts, you can see how it spun out. So it started with light and color meeting the eyes, and you tuned out everything else to pursue that. You had that perception, and then you kicked up another perception of, oh, it's in the category of things I don't get to do anymore. And then you know, I could just kind of play off from there. A lot of times you can, if you were doing aggregates, you could see how a perception is followed by a thought, and the thought is followed by a perception. The perception is followed by a thought. Like when you get into a loop of ill will or fear or desire. Excuse me. Did that answer your question, Adriana?
Yeah, that was way more than I expected. That was great. Thank you. So many opportunities I didn't realize all around me, and living in a busier city, and there's plenty of opportunities apparently. So yeah, thank you. That was really helpful. I appreciate it. And salud.
If we use this tape, there's going to be a lot of work for you, Adriana, to remove all of the allergy signs. Or maybe you could just leave it all in as signs of suffering, dukkha. Oh, the misery of the whole mind, body experience.
We could make it a challenge too, like every time Ayya sneezes, take a deep breath. Or say a sadhu.
I think you're going to end up hyperventilating if you do that. This is suppressed with 4 kinds of allergy medicine, Adriana, 2 Chinese and 2 Western.
Wow, I didn't know you guys got allergies so bad in North Carolina. Got hit pretty bad.
I think it's the tree pollens right now. Not sure, I haven't looked it up. Okay. But at this point, everyone else on the call has heard about my allergies for probably an equivalent of 10 straight minutes. So sorry about that. Now there is, let me check the time. I've got a board meeting in a little while. Yeah, I'll tell you a story about that later. Sorry. I have to call it an afternoon.
Okay. Bye.
Before you all go, who was it that was? Somar was going to give us an announcement. Go ahead and post that thing again if you like.
Sure. It's posted in the chat.
People who come in later don't see it.
Oh, okay. I will repost it.
See what's there.
Basically it's the they depend on their living, work, food, everything through donations. I can't cook. I'm going over there to weed and and can't kill plants. So anything is appreciated. There's also a little cat program there too, which is cool. And but anyway, I am going to repost this before the meeting stops. So if you cannot stop the meeting yet, I'm copying and pasting everything. It would be greatly appreciated. Oh, I can't get my fingers right. Okay, here we go. Uh-oh. Then. Okay.
If anyone would like to help her, everybody saw it. Oh, there it is.
And that's the link under it.
Excellent.
Yes, if anybody wants to come help me, just let Ayya know.
When is it you're coming to do some gardening, Sona?
It's the 21st at 10 of this month.
Very good. Okay, thank you. All right, everybody.
Summer.
Bless you
Thank you,
all.
Ayya. Appreciate it.
Wish us well for a good board meeting today.
Good luck. If you could put this recording on the Dropbox, I'd greatly appreciate it. I would love to.
All right,
upload it.
the recording. Okay.